Number 10. Justin Bieber's roast. The comedy roast. The most wonderful tradition of the comedy world. A gathering of some of the funniest and most clever people on the scene coming together to make fun of each other on stage in a friendly and dark performance. In 2012, actor, comedian, scholar, and jerk James Franco participated in one of these roasts, inviting several top-tier comedians like Sarah Silverman, Aziz Ansari, and to host the show, he got his longtime buddy Seth Rogen. One of the key members of the dais was Jonah Hill. Jonah was best known for comedic roles in movies like The Sitter and Superbad, but around 2011 he made a shift to the more serious side of filming, starring alongside Brad Pitt in the movie Moneyball. While he was sitting in his cozy little chair before his turn on the mic, everyone who came up to the stage had a joke to make about Jonah's behavior. He's been cold and rude, man, with his head jammed so far up his rear that he looks like an alien from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. When Jonah came to the stage to retort, he held his own, but his words were noticeably more scripted compared to his fellow performers who gave like a more off-the-cuff and authentic delivery. The truth has been there all along. Jonah said little to nothing to his fellow roasters following the event, apparently snubbing James himself. Everyone collaborated on a movie called This Is the End, and according to Seth Rogen, it was the last time that he ever saw Jonah Hill smiling and enjoying his time on set. It seems that his turn to the more serious side of things may have taken a toll on his ability to feel joy. Number 9. His choice of roles. Jonah's career is filled with everything from comedy blockbusters to serious dramatic pieces. He got his start working in comedy films, with one of his first performances being a brief cameo in the film 40-Year-Old Virgin before moving to a leading role in the classic cult comedy Superbad. It's one of my favorite movies, and Jonah is by far one of the best parts of it, on top of Bill Hader and Seth Rogen as cops. That's just legendary. While he started making people laughing in 2007, by the mid-2010s, Jonah had shifted his efforts to the more serious and macabre, with his roles in films like True Story and Wolf of Wall Street. He even earned an Oscar nomination for his supporting character in Moneyball with Brad Pitt. The red flag was the dramatic shift in tone from Hill as a performer. If you put his posters from the last 20 years side by side, you'll see that the older he gets, the less color there is on the page. Like, the more serious things are, the more black and white they need to be. He attempted to return to the comedy world in a recent Netflix movie called Don't Look Up, but thanks to the news of his possible tyranny arising, we doubt there will be a 23 Jump Street anytime soon. Number 8. His refusal to be interviewed. Have you ever noticed that when a Jonah Hill movie comes out, he's like never really been around to talk about it? Well, according to several celebrity news and interview sites, Jonah actually refuses to participate in most interviews simply because the ones that he has done in the past have just been extremely uncomfortable. When he was doing press for the movie Superbad, several of the interviewers were asking Jonah questions about his weight, calling him a large comedian over and over again. Now, he may be a large man, but that wasn't necessarily the selling point of Jonah Hill. The following few years, while still being involved in comedy films, Jonah was dodging questions left and right about his size, going up and down. Eventually, Jonah actually lost a ton of weight for his role alongside Channing Tatum in the comedy movie 21 Jump Street. The interviews for that film were the final straw for Jonah, though, now being asked by people why he was so thin, literally fighting one of the most unwinnable battles of interviewer time. Since the early 2010s, Jonah has been sticking to the shadows and simply being in whatever movie comes out. While the line of questioning may have caused him to avoid the interview spotlight, this was around the same time he shifted to a serious role in Moneyball, seemingly proving his mind had snapped. Number 7. Jonah's ex. Recently, a news article broke that has brought to light some troubling information about Jonah Hill. According to his ex-girlfriend Sarah Bradley, Jonah was emotionally damaging towards her during their relationship. The couple first got together in 2021, meeting on a beach as she was a surf instructor. According to a series of texts between Sarah and Jonah, it's obvious that he is mentally manipulative. He tells Sarah to remove any photos of her surfing from Instagram that showed her bum bum in a thong, and when she did that, he told her it was a good start, but that she didn't seem to get his point. He then told her, "It's not my place to teach you. I've made my boundaries clear. You refuse to let go of some of them, and you've made that clear, and I hope that makes you happy." In another screenshot, Jonah showed his plans and simple conditions for maintaining their relationship, including stating that he didn't want Sarah surfing with men. You know, like doing her job. He wrote a massive list of boundaries and rules that were clearly him trying to control everything that Sarah did. One point literally saying that she can't post pictures of herself in a bathing suit. What's she supposed to wear to the beach? A turtleneck? His manipulation is apparent and will surely shift Hollywood's opinion on the once great comedian. Number 6. The Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street is considered to be one of Martin Scorsese's best modern movies. The film is based on a book written by the titular wolf Jordan Belfort, chronicling his rise and demise to stock market fortune. In the film, Jonah plays Donnie Azoff, a man who actually quit his job to work for Jordan in the glory days. His character is a good time on screen, but Jonah's ability to play Donnie is just a little bit too good. Donnie's character spends the majority of the movie being a degenerate and getting his friends either arrested or injured over and over again. According to Martin Scorsese, Jonah would just walk on set and go in. No prep, no routine, he would just go. This should have been the biggest red flag of them all. If someone playing an evil wizard had just walked on set one day and started shooting lightning balls out of their hands, you'd be like, oh my god, that guy's a real wizard. When Jonah was able to easily switch between himself and the womanizing substance user he plays on screen, Martin should have called a psychiatrist to give this guy a good once-over. Number 5. His rapid change in weight. Many performers are able to shrink and grow seemingly at will. Look at Christian Bale. He has gained and lost weight over and over again for roles over the years, attributing the dramatic changes to a form of method acting, allowing him to literally embody his characters. Jonah is no stranger to this concept, as he was spotted over 100 pounds lighter in 21 Jump Street than he had previously been in the movie Moneyball. I guess when you're nominated for an Oscar, they give you some kind of a gym membership or something. We should look into that. While Jonah's rapid shrinking and growing isn't necessarily a red flag per se, we can't imagine that the rapid change is good for his body, and with the news of his possible toxic behavior, it appears that that change may have affected his mental health as well. In his most recent flick, You People, alongside comedy legend Eddie Murphy, Jonah appears to have returned to his larger build and returned to the realm of comedy. Now, I haven't personally seen the movie, but the reviews so far suggest that it may be one of those movies that you throw on in the background, you know, just kind of put it on while people are hanging out. Just not a good one. Number 4, his attitude on set. Jonah may have started his career as a comedy king, but his attitude on set is anything but fun. According to many directors over the years, Jonah is a very gifted actor, able to come to set prepared for work every day with no hesitation. The only overall problem seems to be his communication skills. Jonah is known to be a very quiet and reclusive man on set, apparently spending a majority of his time in trailers away from the cast and crew. He's also known to be rather quiet while being given directions or while waiting for a scene to be reset. Like, imagine being a PA on set, you're standing next to the guy from Superbad and he's just on his phone playing Candy Crush all day. People always say it's the quiet ones that you have to worry about, and it seems that his quiet time may have been spent contemplating the meaning of life and his role in it. Or he spends it making a mental list of all the things that his partner needs to do to please him in a relationship. That might be it too. Number 3, he turned down The Hangover. Arguably one of the funniest trilogies in recent history has been The Hangover Saga, a series of films following 3 friends trying to piece together the wild night they had before. They lose their friends on roofs, they steal monkeys, and Ken Jeong is in it, so you cannot go wrong. What many people may not know is that the role of Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, was actually offered to Jonah Hill over 3 times before they just finally gave up. While there was no specific reason why he didn't want to participate in this, a low-budget flick called Cyrus was released not long after The Hangover started production. It seemed that Jonah wanted to work in a more serious role instead of participating in one of the highest-grossing comedy trilogies of all time. While Cyrus was an interesting movie, it follows Jonah playing the titular son, living with his mother, played by Marissa Tomei, who befriends and begins to date John C. Reilly. It's a great movie, but it's nowhere near the caliber of the Hangover series, so we just wonder how hard Jonah was kicking himself after that one. Number 2, he canned 23 Jump Street. Alright, this is an entry that actually hurts to talk about, so I just need a second because it would have been really cool if they had made it, okay? In 2012, Jonah and Channing Tatum starred in a comedy reboot of the classic crime series 21 Jump Street for a more modern audience. The film received massive success at the box office and was quickly picked up for the sequel treatment. The sequel ended up being one of those few examples in Hollywood history of a second movie being better than the first, which is why it was so surprising to hear that the planned threequel 23 Jump Street was canned by Sony Studios. The main reason being, well, it was just too ambitious for Jonah. You see, the third entry in the franchise was going to be a massive crossover between 2 Sony properties. Jonah and Channing were set to cross paths with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's characters from the Men in Black trilogy. The leaked script told the story of Jonah and Channing's characters investigating a new substance at a university, only to discover that the suppliers are extraterrestrials being hunted by the Men in Black. The idea of Jonah and Channing wearing that black suit and shades while holding comedically large it makes my soul sing with joy. A script was written, but ultimately the studio thought it just wouldn't make any money and end up being a massive misstep in the franchise. Apparently, Jonah actually had something to do with this too. You see, while Channing was filled with excitement towards this project, Jonah felt that the entire thing was going to be one giant pain. His under-enthusiasm made the studio nervous to go forward with what would have been one of the best movies in the last 10 years. Instead, Sony decided to reboot the Men in Black franchise with Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, and it's just bad. It's just really bad. And at number 1, everything about him. I know it's a bit of a cop-out to say that the biggest red flag is everything that Jonah Hill has done, but am I wrong? As mentioned on this list, this guy has shifted his weight up and down, he's ignored his cast and crew while on set, he's flippy-floppy all over the genre map, and he's been mentally manipulative towards the women in his life. Jonah was a light in the early days. People remember him bringing joy to the set and always being in a good mood. But as the years went by, things got worse and worse, to the point that he now just does his job, grabs his check, and moves on to the next project. Now that he's been outed as being a mentally manipulative man in his personal life, we can only imagine the slew of backlash and cancellation that Jonah is surely about to face. Number 10. Robert Pattinson. Alright Team Edward, time to cozy up with a fuzzy wolf pelt from your recent enemy, and check this out. Robert has been stealing the show on the silver screen since being thrust into the mainstream, following his role as Edward Cullen in the Twilight franchise. But recently he's donned the costume of a different Bat-themed character, this time as DC's newest Batman. The 3-hour film was released last year and received incredible reviews. The only sour one was from Jonah Hill. You see, during the casting process, Jonah was actually offered the role as one of the 3 main villains of the film, Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. And according to Robert, he turned down DC several times, apparently wishing to avoid the multi-contract deal that comes with playing a comic book character. Ryan Gosling follows this same principle and is the main reason that Jared Leto played the Joker in 2016's Suicide Squad rather than himself, which is... Sorry, I just get a weird flashback whenever I talk about that movie. Ugh. Jonah went on to say that his choice was well warranted, as the film style and tone didn't really fit the type of performance that he wanted to give as the flightless bird-themed villain. Instead, they thought it would be a good idea to put Colin Farrell in a fat suit for 10 years, and Robert doesn't care for Jonah much anymore. So, there you go. Number 9. James Franco. James may exist in a small pocket of cancellation thanks to him being unable to keep his hands to himself, but he shared his opinion on Jonah after starring across from him in the 2015 drama thriller True Story. The film followed the true story of a disgraced New York Times reporter named Michael Finkel, who meets an accused killer, Christian Longo, who has taken on Frank's identity, but his investigation morphs into a game of cat and mouse. The film was underpromoted at the time and flew relatively under the radar. This would end up being the last time that these two ever collaborated, as James claims that Jonah was no longer the joyous man he once knew on set. He took the role very seriously, so much so that the project was treated as work and not a collaboration between 2 old friends. James was hoping to spend some time with Jonah off set, but was instead ignored and made to feel like he was Longo. In one of his final interviews, when asked about the project, James calls out Jonah by name as being wonderful on screen but quiet off set. Oh well, James did some gross stuff, and this is probably the first time you've heard about him in a while, whereas Jonah... Yeah, never mind. Number 8, Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper may be getting paychecks for playing the Build-A-Bear-Come-to-Life Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, but most hopefully know him from the Hangover trilogy, one of the greatest comedy trilogies of all time. This trilogy follows 3 friends trying to piece together the wild night that they had before. They lose their friends on roofs, they steal monkeys, and Ken Jeong is in it, so yeah, it's pretty good. What many people may not know is that the role of Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, was actually offered to Jonah Hill over 3 times before the team finally gave up. While there was no specific reason that he didn't want to participate in the project, a low-budget flick called Cyrus was released not long after The Hangover started production. It seemed that Jonah wanted to work in a more serious role instead of participating in what ended up being one of the highest-grossing comedy trilogies of all time. Cyrus was an okay movie, and I own it, so, you know, they had some money made from it. Bradley Cooper doesn't care how good it is, though. Not only did Jonah deny them 3 times, but doing it without explanation is just plain rude. Bradley actually attempted to give Jonah an olive branch and get him to make a brief cameo in The Hangover Part 2, but he denied that appearance too, and instead the role went to Paul Giamatti. So, Number 7. Miles Teller. Miles and Jonah worked together on a flick in 2016 called War Dogs, based on a true story of two young men, David Pecuz and Ephraim Vitaroli, who won a $300 million contract with the Pentagon to arm American allies in Afghanistan. It received massive critical acclaim, and I personally loved every single minute of it. According to Miles, his time on set with his co-star Jonah was interesting to say the least. Apparently, Jonah was actually livelier on this particular set than in more recent movies, which led to himself and Miles becoming very close. Whenever he is asked about the project, he takes a moment to shout out his partner in crime, Jonah Hill, claiming that the picture would never have been as successful were it not for his involvement. With the recent news that Jonah may be the baddest apple of them all, though, he's surely going to be revising that statement whenever asked about the project in the future. Number 6. Russell Brand. Get Him to the Greek was an ambitious spin-off movie that was released in 2010. It centered around two characters from the film Forgetting Sarah Marshall. Russell Brand, who played Aldous Snow, the man who steals Sarah from Jason Segel, and Jonah is their waiter / Aldous' biggest and strangest fan at the Hawaiian resort that we spend most of the movie in. Get Him to the Greek takes those characters and gives them room to live and breathe. We find out that Jonah's character is actually an intern at a record label who is tasked with accompanying Aldous Snow to a concert at LA's Greek Theater. The flick is filled with outlandish set pieces, wild nights out, and Jeffries. Whenever Russell is asked about his opinion on the movie, he calls it his magnum opus. He feels his performance during the flick was the best representation of his acting skills, being able to be gross and funny at the same time. He's called out Jonah for making time on set difficult, as Jonah is an improviser and he would change lines and throw Russell off a lot. Most of the improvised moments made it into the final project and is probably the majority of the reason that the flick did so well. Number 5. Sam Rockwell. Sam had the joy of working with Mr. Hill on one of his worst movies ever made. The Sitter, a comedy released in 2011, starred Jonah as the titular sitter Noah, coaxed into babysitting the kids next door, only to be forced to drag them into a wild night that they could never forget. I personally enjoy this movie. There are some really positive moments that teach people about accepting differences and being your best self, but it's also got genitals being set on fire, no snow, and a lot of swearing, so I get why it has a 22% on Rotten Tomato. The main antagonist of this movie is played by Sam Rockwell, who you may know from movies like Mr. Right, Jojo Rabbit, and Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. This man is a tremendous performer and is probably one of the better parts of the movie. He just wants his frickin' Fabergé egg back! Jonah made Sam's time on set insanely difficult thanks to Jonah constantly breaking character whenever he made eye contact with Sam. A scene where Sam grabs Jonah's face had to undergo over 20 takes because they just couldn't keep it together. Nobody cared about the delays, however, because something tells me everyone on the crew kinda knew what they had gotten themselves into. Number 4. Channing Tatum. In 2012, Jonah and Channing Tatum starred in a comedy reboot of the classic crime series 21 Jump Street for a more modern audience. The film received massive success at the box office, and it was quickly picked up for the sequel treatment. The sequel ended up being one of the few examples in Hollywood history of the second movie being better than the first. It made a lot of money and it was really funny, which is why it was so surprising to hear that the planned threequel 23 Jump Street was canned by Sony Studios. The main reason being, well, it was too ambitious for Jonah. Third entry in the franchise was going to be a massive crossover between two Sony properties. Jonah and Channing were set to cross paths with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's characters from the Men in Black trilogy. The leaked script told the story of Jonah and Channing's characters investigating a new substance at a university, only to discover that the suppliers are extraterrestrials being hunted by the Men in Black. The idea of Jonah and Channing wearing the suits and shades while holding comically large weapons makes my soul sing with joy, but a script was written and ultimately the studio thought it would just not make any money and end up being a misstep in the franchise. Apparently Jonah actually had something to do with this though. While Channing was really excited about the project, Jonah thought the whole thing was going to be a big pain in the butt, and his under-enthusiasm made the studio nervous to go forward with what would have probably been one of the best movies in the last 10 years. I mean, you can't get those images out of your head now, can you? Instead, Sony decided to reboot Men in Black with Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, and that just needs to be burned and shredded and just gone from existence. Needless to say, Channing has held a grudge towards Jonah ever since he was robbed of the opportunity to fight space aliens alongside Will Smith, and he refuses to ever collaborate with Jonah in the future. Number 3. Jennifer Lawrence. Katniss Everdeen is the role that launched Jennifer's career into what it is today. Since starring in the live-action adaptation of the novel The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, Jennifer has been asked to star in films in every genre there is. The film Mother is an introspective horror thriller. She's been in Oscar bait movies like Silver Linings Playbook playbook, and most recently she starred in a Netflix project called Don't Look Up as the leading lady alongside Oscar winner Leonardo DiCaprio. The film received wonderful reviews, and I personally had a great time watching it. One role in particular that was pretty well done was that of Jonah Hill. Jonah played the advisor to Meryl Streep's president character, and he steals every single scene he's in. According to Lawrence, though, it will be the last time that she ever works with Jonah in her life, because when asked about the process of filming with the comedian turned serious actor, she said it was just really difficult. Jonah had a tendency to improvise his lines on set, which would cause the fellow cast to break over and over again. Now, while jokes may be a fun inclusion at times, filming schedules can be pretty tight, and he caused 12-hour days to become 15-hour days. Jennifer may have had fun on set, but she has gone on record saying if she ever needed him for a serious role, she's gonna get somebody else. Number 2, Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen is a big reason that Jonah even has a career. Seth wrote the script for Superbad with his writing partner Evan Goldberg, and he decided to cast a young Jonah as himself in the movie. The film made a lot of money, and it began a highly collaborative relationship between Rogen and Hill. They ended up working together on several projects over the years, from everything from Knocked Up in 2007 to Sausage Party in 2015. Sorry, I get a headache whenever I talk about that movie. And a craving for hot dogs. However, that would be their last collaboration after Seth discovered just how cruel his friend had become. During the Comedy Central roast of James Franco, Seth acted as the host for the event and called out his former buddy, making several jokes aimed at Jonah about his behavior since making a transition into the more serious roles when he starred in the 2011 Oscar bait flick Moneyball alongside Bullet Train star Brad Pitt. He wasn't the only one. Everyone on the dais that had worked with Jonah in the past were also making comments about his behavior before he came up to retort with just the driest jokes of the night. Since the news has broken about his ex coming forward with allegations of mistreatment on Jonah's part, Seth has stated that he hasn't, nor will he ever work with this new mean Jonah Hill anytime soon. And at number 1, it's Brad Pitt. Brad has been dominating the acting world for a long time now in everything from Fight Club to Bullet Train. He steals the show and he captivates the audience. In 2011, he starred alongside Jonah Hill and several Hollywood heavyweights for the Oscar bait movie Moneyball. The film follows Pitt's character, Billy Beane, as the general manager of the Oakland A's, who successfully attempts to assemble a baseball team on a lean budget by employing computer-generated analysis to acquire new players. I'm sorry, I'm so bored just saying that. The film received a slew of Academy Award nominations, including Best Performances by an Actor in both a leading and supporting role. Jonah's performance is considered to be one of the best of his career and was the role that launched him into Hollywood's A-list. But Brad has some things to say about that. Over the years, the two developed a close relationship, and at one point even hosting get-togethers at each other's houses. When being interviewed about Jonah's time on the project, Pitt acknowledged that his performance was great, but that Jonah's greatest skill is actually his ability to drink 2 bottles of no-no juice at once, calling out Jonah as a party trick master.
Don't worry about him. We've been doing this a long time. He's just tired.
Number 10, Bradley Cooper. Bradley Cooper may be getting paychecks for playing the Build-A-Bear come-to-life Rocket Raccoon in the Guardians of the Galaxy franchise, but most people hopefully know him from the Hangover trilogy, one of the greatest comedy trilogies of all time. The trilogy follows 3 friends trying to piece together the wild night that they had before. They lose friends on roofs, they steal monkeys, and Ken Jeong is in it, so you cannot go wrong. What many people may not know is that the role of Alan, played by Zach Galifianakis, was actually offered to Jonah Hill over 3 times before the team finally gave up. Now, while there was no specific reason for why he didn't want to participate in the project, a low-budget flick called Cyrus was released not long after The Hangover started production. It seemed that Jonah wanted to work in a more serious role instead of participating in what ended up being one of the highest-grossing comedy trilogies of all time. Cyrus was an okay movie, but Bradley Cooper doesn't care how good it was. Not only did Jonah deny him 3 times, but doing it without explanation was just plain rude. Bradley actually attempted to get Jonah back for a brief cameo role in The Hangover Part 2, but he denied that appearance too. Instead, the role went to Paul Giamatti, who, just ever since The Amazing Spider-Man 2, I just can't look at Paul Giamatti without hearing that bad Russian accent. I am Rhino! Being snubbed by Jonah twice was enough to get him blacklisted from Bradley's hire list forever. Number 9, Robert Pattinson. He's Batman, he's a vampire, he's a Hufflepuff, he's Robert Pattinson. Robert has been stealing the show on the silver screen since being thrust into the mainstream following his role as Edward Cullen in the Twilight franchise. But recently he's donned the costume of a different Bat-themed character, this time as DC's newest Batman. The 3-hour film was released last year and it received incredible reviews. The only sour one was from Jonah Hill. You see, during the casting process, Jonah was actually offered the role as one of the 3 main villains of the film, Oswald Cobblepot, aka the Penguin. He turned down DC several times, apparently wishing to avoid the multi-contract deal that comes with playing a comic book character. Ryan Gosling follows this same principle and is the main reason why Jared Leto played the Joker in the 2016 Suicide Squad rather than himself. It's probably the best decision he ever made in his career. Jonah went on to say that his choice was well warranted, as the film's style and tone just didn't really fit with the type of performance that he wanted to give as the flightless bird-themed villain. And what an appropriate animal to use for a villain. Look at that smug motherfucker. I mean, what? I love penguins. They've never bothered me in any way, shape, or form, and certainly not in an aquarium in Tennessee. Why would you let people pet those things? Robert has gone on record claiming that he will never invite Jonah to work on another project ever again for fear of rejection. It's too bad for Jonah. Batman is getting a sequel and he's getting cancelled. Number 8. Jennifer Lawrence. Katniss Everdeen is the role that launched Jennifer Lawrence into the career that she has today. Since starring in the live-action adaptation of the novel The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, Jennifer has been asked to star in films in every genre there is. The film Mother is an introspective horror thriller. She's been in Oscar bait movies like Silver Linings Playbook, and most recently she starred in a Netflix project called Don't Look Up as the leading lady alongside Oscar winner Leonardo DiCaprio. The film has received wonderful reviews and I personally had a great time watching the flick. One role in particular that was very well done was that of Jonah Hill's. Jonah played the advisor to Meryl Streep's president character and he steals every single scene that he's in. According to Lawrence though, it will be the last time that she ever works with Hill in her life. When asked about the process of filming with the comedian turned serious actor, she said it was really hard. Jonah had a tendency to improvise his lines on set, which would cause the fellow cast to break character over and over again. Now, while the jokes may have been a fun inclusion at the time, filming schedules can be very tight, and this caused 12-hour days to become 15-hour days. Jennifer may have had fun on set, but she's gone on record saying that if she ever needed him for a serious role, the answer's gonna be no. Number 7. Beanie Feldstein. In case you were unaware of this wonderful actor, let me just do a little recap for you. Beanie got her break on the silver screen when she was cast to join the sequel to Seth Rogen's hit comedy flick Neighbors, alongside Chloe Grace Moretz and Kiersey Clemens as the leading ladies. She dominated every scene that she was in with impeccable comedic timing and commitment to her role. It may come as a surprise to know that Beanie is actually Jonah's little sister. Beanie decided to use her legal last name as well as a nickname that stuck with her since her childhood. Her actual name is Elizabeth. Let's face it, it's 2023 though. I know lots of people with weirder names than Beanie. One of my buddies has a kid named after his favorite car brand, Subaru McDonald. It's not a good name. Beanie has been gaining more and more popularity thanks to the success of films like Booksmart and her current role as Nancy Drew in a reboot cartoon series. When asked about her relationship with her brother Jonah, Beanie had mixed things to say. While she loves her brother and would never judge him in any way, she is well aware of his tendency to be a little snappy or judgmental towards people. Apparently Jonah was the older sibling that gave those noogies or like broke eggs over their heads. No, just me, I only got that? Okay. When it comes to collaboration, they have decided to keep their work lives separate from their family lives. Gee, I wonder what dinners are like at the Hill House. Wait a minute. Hill House? Jonah's a ghost! I'll just leave. Number 6. Christopher Mintz-Plasse. The cult classic comedy Superbad helped launch several careers in 2007. Michael Cera, Jonah Hill, and Christopher Mintz-Plasse played our 3 main protagonists, whose sole goal is to get the girl and party hard before going off to college. This was actually Christopher's first ever performance on screen, apparently being casted for the role due to Jonah Hill's immediate disdain for Chris. While their on-screen characters Seth and Fogel, aka McLovin, may be the definition of frenemies, this actually translated on set as well. Jonah would constantly pick on Chris and tease him. While some claim that this was Jonah being method, Chris knows the reality. He was being tormented by a fellow actor. He was able to stand up for himself himself, as Jonah was visibly frustrated that he couldn't get Chris to cave when berating him. In fact, as casting began, Jonah told Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg that he wanted nothing to do with Chris, which made them want to cast him even more. The film was a critical success, still considered to be one of Evan Goldberg and Seth Rogen's greatest comedy flicks to date, but that didn't stop Chris from making his opinions known. When filming began for the 2013 comedy This Is the End, Christopher and Michael Cera were asked to make cameos in the infamous party scene. Reportedly, it took over $250,000 to get Chris to appear in the film for the brief Superbad reunion, apparently claiming that Jonah's presence on set just made him really uncomfortable. In the end, the shot was taken and Chris moved on to star in a few minor roles before finding a home in the world of voice acting. Number 5. Channing Tatum. This one stings. A lot, like this really stings. In 2012, Jonah and Channing Tatum starred in a comedy reboot of the classic crime series 21 Jump Street, just for a more modern audience. The film received massive success at the box office, and it was quickly picked up for the sequel treatment. The sequel ended up being one of the few examples in Hollywood history of a second movie being better than the first, which is why it was so surprising to hear that a planned threequel, 23 Jump Street, got canned by Sony Studios. The main reason being, well, apparently it was too ambitious for Jonah. The third entry in the franchise was going to be a massive crossover between two Sony properties, and I'm going to talk about it a lot because I'm never going to let this one go. Jonah and Channing were set to cross paths with Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith's characters from the Men in Black trilogy. The leaked script told the story of Jonah and Channing's characters investigating a new substance at a university, only to discover that the suppliers are extraterrestrials being hunted by the Men in Black. How does that not sound like a good movie? The idea of Jonah and Channing wearing the black suit and shades while holding comically large weapons makes my soul sing with joy. A script was written, but ultimately the studio thought that it wouldn't make any money and it would just end up being a misstep in the franchise. Apparently Jonah actually had something to do with this too. While Channing was filled with excitement towards the project, he was so stoked, Jonah felt that the entire thing would be one giant pain in the butt. His underenthusiasm made the studio nervous to go forward with the project, which probably would have been the best movie in the last 10 years. Instead, Sony decided to reboot Men in Black with Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, and that didn't go well. Needless to say, Channing has held a grudge towards Jonah ever since he was robbed of the opportunity to fight space aliens with Will Smith and refuses to ever collaborate with him again. It's all good though. I'm sure in that new version of Men in Black they wouldn't even use firearms. Will Smith would probably just be slapping aliens left and right, telling them to keep his wife's name out of their mouths. Number 4. Seth Rogen. Seth Rogen is a big reason that Jonah even has a career. Seth wrote the script for Superbad with his writing partner Evan Goldberg and decided to cast a young Jonah as himself in the film. The movie made a lot of money and began a highly collaborative relationship between Rogen and Hill. They ended up working together on and off and starring in a number of flicks from Knocked Up in 2007 to 2015's Sausage Party. However, that would be their last collaboration after Seth discovered just how cruel his friends had become. During the Comedy Central roast of James Franco, Seth acted as the host for the event, and he made several jokes aimed at Jonah about his behavior since making a transition into more serious roles when he starred in the 2011 Oscar bait flick Moneyball alongside Bullet Train star Brad Pitt. He wasn't the only one. Everyone on the dais that had worked with Jonah in the past also made comments about his behavior before he came up to retort with some of the driest jokes of the night. Since the news has broken about his ex coming forward with allegations of mistreatment on Jonah's part, Seth has stated that he hasn't, nor will he ever work with the new, meaner Jonah Hill anytime soon. Number 3. Judd Apatow. Judd is another entry on this list who is partially responsible for the inception of Jonah's career. In fact, he was the first person to ever direct him when he made a brief cameo in the film 40-Year-Old Virgin as a man who's just trying to buy some shoes so he can take them home and wear them. He stole the show, so much so that Judd actually asked Jonah to appear in a number of films over the years as a supporting character. From Knocked Up to Funny People, Jonah was there and his presence was known by all. Judd has mentioned in recent years that the chances of Jonah working in anything new was probably unlikely. The reason being, well, Jonah's just too darn famous and mean now. Apparently their relationship as colleagues was fun at first, but since moving into the realm of a serious actor, he's become increasingly more difficult to work with. Jonah has become a bit of a recluse on set, known to be fairly quiet and standoffish whenever he's not on camera, appearing to be the type of person who can turn off their comedy switch. Can someone please help me find mine, because it's not welcome at funerals. While Judd may not be as busy as he once was, he has said that he would like to work with new talent in the upcoming years, so unless Jonah pulls like a Mrs. Doubtfire on Judd, I think we can safely say that they're not working together anymore. Number 2, Jay Baruchel. Jay Baruchel has only ever appeared with Jonah physically on screen twice. Once in the comedy flop Knocked Up, and the other is the 2013 hidden gem that is This Is the End. And This Is the End, the cast play fictionalized versions of themselves being caught up in a rapture that leaves them stranded on Earth in the midst of an apocalyptic meltdown. It's truly a fun movie. It's a wonderfully funny movie filled with weird set pieces, including several scenes where Jonah Hill becomes possessed by a demon and is just so sarcastic about it. In the earlier segments of the movie, Jonah portrays himself as a stereotypical Hollywood A-lister. He's met you before, but he just can't remember your name or like why he knows you or where he knows you from. In real life, Jay and Jonah aren't very close, but are certainly no strangers to each other. Unfortunately, their relationship in This Is the End is not far off from their real life one. Due to Jay living primarily in Canada when he's not working on a project, he never sees or keeps in contact with his old buddies. Now that Jonah has been acting in Oscar-nominated features alongside A-listers, Jay has been left to his own devices. And those devices seem to be a mic and a laptop, because he's got a podcast now. And at number 1, Eddie Murphy. Eddie Betty Oxenfree has been a prominent figure in the comedy scene since breaking onto the silver screen in 1982's 48 Hours, alongside Nick Nolte, the fake army guy from Tropic Thunder. He was also the Hulk's dad, but we just don't like to talk about that movie. Eddie's career has been nothing but a slew of comedy classics and family favorites. He seemingly retired from performing in 2013 after many fans noticed that he wasn't in the process of making anything new, nor was he making many public appearances. Well, it was simply because he was pulling a Jonah Hill and he decided to star in some more serious movies for a few minutes instead. With more dramatic roles in movies like Mr. Church and Dolomite Is My Name. Recently he starred alongside Jonah Hill in a Netflix movie called You People. The film follows Jonah and his girlfriend dealing with each other's in-laws who find themselves examining modern love and family dynamics amidst clashing cultures. The trailer just makes it sound like, hey, his parents are ignorant and hers just want their point to be heard. Together they make one wacky wild family, it's You People! While on set, Murphy claims that Jonah would regularly break character and give the director notes in the middle of takes, seeming to share his inside Oscar knowledge with the cast. Needless to say, Eddie doesn't make a ton of movies anymore, and he's decided not to include Jonah in his next project, Meet Dave Again! That's not a real movie, but it really should be, because that was a weird one, and it deserves more to the story.
Coming at number 10 is James Franco. James has placed himself in a little bubble of public exile for using his powers for evil. The man behind some iconic characters like his portrayal as a real-life filmmaker Tommy Wiseau, his role as Harry Osborn in the original Spider-Man trilogy, and so many more, seemed to be on his way to a long, successful career, following multiple collaborations with longtime friend Seth Rogen, as well as his turn in more serious roles like True Story as a man on death row telling his tale of woe to a writer played by Jonah Hill. Apparently though, James has a problem keeping his hands to himself, especially when it comes to his acting students. In 2018, 5 female students at Studio 4 acting school in North Hollywood told the Los Angeles Times that Franco had parlayed his position to exploit them physically. 2 of these women sued, and Franco was forced to settle outside of court and fork over the $2.23 million. At the time, he was writing, acting, and directing a show for HBO called The Deuce, which he was allowed to stay on and finish since it was being cancelled anyway. Not only did fans call for the cancellation of the series, but the public outcry forced Seth Rogen to drop his longtime pal, telling the Times of London that the scandal has changed their relationship and he refuses to collaborate with James anytime in the near future. And at number 9 we have Mike Myers. He's Canadian, he's a comedian. How could this guy be mean? Well, it turns out it's his default setting. Mike may be well known in the world of Hollywood as a funny man, but to his fans he's known as a short-tempered madman. One experience was shared with the media outlet Mean Stars, in which a fan told a story of running into Mike at a bar, with the experience being disastrous as the love guru, like anything, could be so bad. The fan walked up and told Mike he was a big fan and offered to buy him a drink, to which Mike replied with, "I can afford my own drinks. Save the cash for my next movie." There are several instances both on and off sets showcasing his difficulty working with people. His Cat in the Hat co-star Amy Hill claimed that he had handlers dress his entire trailer and his work area was entirely covered with tenting because he didn't want anybody to physically see him. Maybe his reputation as a difficult Donnie has something to do with Hollywood seemingly blacklisting him from appearing as a lead in anything until his recent show aired on Netflix. A show where he's forced to play half the cast because he couldn't get more people to work with him. Maybe it has something to do with the love guru. Just maybe. And at number 8 we have Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle dominated the comedy scene in the 90s and early 2000s. His stand-up was considered the most gut-busting and entertaining around, and his role in films like The Nutty Professor, Robin Hood, Hood, Men in Tights, and the cult classic Half-Baked. He took a bit of a break from starring in films to focus on his family and his true passion, stand-up comedy. Despite being on stage for over 12 years, Dave never really learned to follow suit with the times, and there were certain topics that became rude to joke about. Many jokes considered funny in the 80s and 90s have not aged well, and unfortunately that seems to be all the material Dave has. In one of the most recent Netflix specials, he made jokes aimed at the LGBTQ+ community. Jokes not worth quoting or repeating. They were rough enough to have Dave fans turn on him immediately. While he was cancelled by his fans, Netflix actually defended the comedian, claiming he had artistic freedom even after a group of Netflix employees and transgender advocates staged a virtual walkout. The co-CEO, Ted Sarandis, who released the statement, later admitted that he handled the situation poorly. Did you accidentally defend a man that was making fun of gay people? Gosh darn. Dave hasn't been cast in anything anytime in recent history, as any and all who've collaborated with him in the past have distanced themselves as much as possible. And coming in at number 7 is Roseanne Barr. In the late 80s, Roseanne started a sitcom titled after herself, and she starred alongside Hollywood heavyweight John Goodman in a series that followed the couple's everyday lives as a working class family. The show aired for 230 episodes, eventually being cancelled in the mid-90s. The show was eventually revived in 2018 as the same wholesome content for a new generation. Unfortunately for Roseanne, sitcom producers have Twitter. Her show was quickly cancelled only a few hours following Barr posting a tweet about Valerie Jarrett, telling the world that she was the product of Planet of the Apes and a certain brotherhood had a baby. She later apologized for the tweets, but the damage was done. ABC Entertainment President Channing Dungey said in a statement that Roseanne's Twitter statement is abhorrent, repugnant, and inconsistent with their values. Again, with the values. Barr actually defended her tweets, saying they were not racist, but in fact a joke. Yeah, those can be the same thing, Rosie. She's yet to be hired by any studio and has stayed silent ever since. And at number 6 is J.K. Rowling. As a Harry Potter geek, this one stings. J.K. Rowling is known for being the author of the much-loved Harry Potter book series that was eventually adapted in 7 Gloriously Magical Movies and Order of the Phoenix. In June 2020, Rowling retweeted an op-ed piece that discussed people who menstruate, apparently taking issue with the fact that the article didn't use the word women. She tweeted, "People who menstruate? I'm sure there used to be a word for those people. Someone help me out." This tweet garnered massive amounts of backlash from fans. Rowling doubled down on her views in more detail, and she tweeted, "If gender isn't real, there's no same-gender attraction. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of gender removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives." She went on to say that she respected trans people's right to live in any way that feels authentic to them, but at the same time, her life had been shaped by being female. She claimed it wasn't wrong to speak the truth and to be proud, but no. Everyone in the world called JK out for her comments and views, with the live-action Harry Potter stars even taking to Twitter to call out her behavior, standing with the trans community. She unfortunately still makes money off the Fantastic Beasts franchise, but she's been refused work on set for the rest of her days, having to watch her property prosper without her. Now at number 5 is Morgan Freeman, the voice of God himself. Morgan Freeman has been soothing the soul of many for many years. To this day, families can hear Morgan narrate the world around them in an immersive 360 IMAX screen at the Science Center in Toronto. He may be a comfort to some, but according to a few women, Morgan is their nightmare. Morgan has been accused of inappropriate behavior on multiple occasions between 1991 and 2015. According to one production assistant from the film Going in Style, a bank heist movie starring Freeman, Michael Caine and Alan Arkin said that Freeman subjected a woman to unwanted touching and comments about her figure and clothing on a near daily basis. This move is rarely received well. Get a new move, or better yet, don't have a move. Just walk up and say hi and show her your Beanie Baby collection. According to her, in one instance, Freeman attempted to lift her skirt and asked to see under her clothes. She was not the only one to speak out. A senior member of production staff on the movie, Now You See Me Too, told CNN that Freeman harassed her and her female assistant on numerous occasions, making similar comments on her figure and clothes. I could go on more and more with examples, but to save time and boil it down for you, Morgan is creepy. In case you haven't noticed, he doesn't act much anymore and is regularly refused work by any and all he asks. At number 4 we have Rihanna, who is apparently a rude lady, according to some of her fans at least. A fan shared their story of a coworker who experienced firsthand just how cold she can be. They told Insider that they had won free tickets and backstage passes from a radio concert. When it came time for the coworker and her kids to meet Rihanna, she was sitting at her makeup booth and refused to face them. When the young fans asked if they could get her autograph, she instructed a nearby backup dancer to forge the signature before shooing them away like an actual actual villain. Oh, you want my love? Shoo! In 2016, she further added fuel to the fire when she shared a photo of a young fan wearing a dress inspired by Rihanna's Wile E. Coyote themed costume that she'd worn at an award show a few years prior. She wrote "Dark Thought Rises" with the hashtag PromBat. She shared the post with millions of people, alienating countless fans and ruining one fan's prom memories for the rest of their lives. Rihanna could have been the next big pop/TV star, but her attitude just makes people look at her. And at number 3 we have Tom Cruise. While Tom may be an action movie star and was once a young Hollywood heartthrob, he's had a massive temper since day one. According to both former assistants as well as several co-stars from Tom's past, Cruise is a regular toddler and is known to throw tantrums, being set off by the smallest of things. His former manager, Eileen Berlin, presented Tom with a gift on his 19th birthday. She gave him an album of teen magazine articles written about him, and apparently that set him off. He told his manager he considered himself an adult, not a teen idol, and threw the book right back in her face. Another example of Tom's aggression was on display during a filming of his recent Top Gun sequel, Top Gun Maverick. During this time, Tom and the rest of the film crew were tasked to shoot an actual aircraft carrier still in use by the US military. One of the crew posted on Twitter calling out the audacity of Tom's behavior. He tweeted Tom Cruise was really on our ship, telling people not to talk or even look at him. After a few choice words, the crewmate made it very clear that Tom was not welcome aboard their vessel. These are just 2 examples though. Tom has blown up on film crews several times in the past to the point where his Mission Impossible 2 co-star was constantly scared of Tom on set and what he may freak out about next. Needless to say, nobody is lining up to hire Tom in their next pick, other than whoever's stuck making the next Mission Impossible movie. And our runner-up is Russell Crowe, the Gladiator star and newest addition to the world of mythology in the MCU, playing Zeus. Russell has had a steady career filled with blockbuster paychecks and fans galore, but according to several sources, the Pope's exorcist has quite the temper. In 2005, he made headlines for throwing a cell phone at a Mercer Hotel employee in New York City. Apparently, he found out it was broken and threw it without looking. It exploded on impact. The incident ended up being taken a bit far, but that was not the only example of his escapades. In 2016, he returned to the media circuit, this time facing charges of alleged violence towards rapper Azealia Banks. That dissolved into a he said she said situation that was settled outside of court. Crowe has also made a mess on the set of his early days. A producer on the film Gladiator claims that Crowe became furious and violent when he discovered how much the producer's assistant was being paid. The situation forced the producer Branko Lustig to quit the production. While many fans loved Crowe in Gladiator, the people on set were a different story entirely. His career is slowly on the decline as showcased by his recent passion projects The Pope's Exorcist, a low-budget, dreadful movie that almost everyone involved regrets ever participating in. And our number 1 spot goes to Taylor Swift. Taylor's tyranny of torment must end now. Taylor Swift has made a name for herself as a person who thrives on ending of a relationship. Since the late 2000s, Taylor has been making millions in the music industry. Her songs like Love Story and 22 are anthems to many. The catchy tunes tend to come from a place of so-called heartache. However, Taylor has thanked her exes on several occasions for inspiring the songs that made her who she is today. People like Tom Hiddleston, Harry Styles, Jake Gyllenhaal all have a part to play in the inception of some bops. The argument can and should be made that Taylor should just chill. She's made several songs that were good without the need to berate an ex. Some of those songs were revealing. Imagine if after every breakup you've ever had, song pops up in your phone by U2 called Why They Left You. While she may have collaborated with some artists in the past, nobody is jumping at the chance to work with her and possibly have a song written about their bad job.